everyone. We're here today. My name is Brian Jackson. I am the Process Improvement SIG Executive Advisor. I am a quality system professional at Eaton Corporation, and I come to you today to highlight our monthly spotlight for the month of November. And with that, we are having a discussion with Jerome Brown, a quality professional that has spent many years in quality. Jerome, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jerome Brown. I work for an organization called HDR. I've been there for January will be 19 years. Before that, I worked at ExxonMobil and then a research division of Daimler that focused on hydrogen fuel cell engines. But that's been some time ago. I started in HDR as a mechanical engineer in their water business group, and then started to get engaged in several aspects of the organization and found myself in the quality world pretty quick. So been in quality in some form or fashion in my firm for about 13 years. So.
Yeah, sure. All right, so you had already alluded to my first question was how you got into that line of work. So kudos for the transition from the gas and oil sector over into the construction slash building sector. But what lessons have you learned along the way?
Wow. So whatever plans you had, they're only good as the day you wrote them, right? Yeah. So ever since college, I think I've always had a map and plan of what I wanted to accomplish and achieve in life. And I'd say very little of that has ever gone to script. But what it does do is it gets you to think and position yourself so that when opportunities do come up, you're ready to explore and capitalize on those. So, if I went with my original plan, I'd still be in aerospace, and I would have went to a completely different school than I ended up to. But you kind of got to roll with the punches, and as life presents you new forks in the road, all the planning and preparatory work that you've done helps you choose the best path going forward. So, not saying I've always made the best decisions. I think we can all look back and say, "Oh wow, that probably wasn't the best thing to do," or best. Wish I didn't do that. Both career and personal, but everything happens for a reason too. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned is it's good to plan. It's a good exercise, but as soon as push comes to shove, you got to be able to adapt and pivot, and then leverage your experience to make the right decision for now, right? Because no decision is perfect.
No, not at all. Especially dealing in the COVID life of 2020, right? You got to learn how to pivot. So if you were to give yourself advice about your line of work, what would it be?
Over communicate, I'd say. One of the things that I found is the stakeholders that we have in our organization, and I'm sure this is the same as any organization, balance several fires at once, right? Everyone's spinning multiple plates and trying to keep them all from collapsing to the floor. So they forget. We all do. We forget. Even part of initiatives that we've helped make decisions on, we forget. And the only way to combat that and to make sure all your stakeholders have the information they need to make good business decisions is to continually communicate. And I'm not saying that like I'm the best at it and I figured it out, but it's a hard lesson learned, and something that I continually focus and refine. The more and better you can communicate with your both executive and local stakeholders, the better off and success your office and your people will have. So.
All right. No, that makes sense. Over communication and just keeping people. And a lot of people don't have communication plans on how they communicate to people. So that is that's kind of key. Who do you talk to? How often you talk to them? When you talk to them? It's something good to have, in the back of your plan. Like like you said, to have a plan for that. So at least you know when you're trying to do stuff. But what do you believe your greatest contribution to your work, your area of focus has been?
Um, so this might sound weird. It's not really anything that I've done directly for the job or the profession. It's been for the organization, and that's to identify talent and promote them through the organization and be their champion, either directly or indirectly. I think an organization is only as good as its people, and I have core job responsibilities, of course. You know, the nature of our work demands high quality of work, and that's always a focus. What I'd say equally as important is to identify leadership in our organization that might not be capitalized or leveraged appropriately, and elevate them to other leaders so that they can get the opportunities they need to be successful. So I always focus on um, the people side being a little more important than the technical side. I don't know if that's uniform among everybody. I'm sure people focus on a project or something that they're proud of, but you know, my best moments are connecting the dots so that people get promotions or leadership roles in the organization, or achieve more than I have. So
I think it's important when you are in a position of where you can persuade or offer insight, is to help those along the way, especially those that may have not gotten the chance any other way. So no, I think that's a great area of contribution. Now, if you were to consider your greatest strength and opportunity, what would those be?
not taking yourself too serious, right? Um, I, I think being able to relate to anybody at any level in the organization is a skill that um, it may not be innate in everyone, but it should definitely be something that they work and build on. Um, I can easily walk into an office and start a conversation with the temporary janitor staff that aren't even part of our organization, as well as walk immediately into a meeting with the office, you know, leadership, um, and everyone in between. I think being relatable, talking to people, understanding what their concerns or issues are, um, and you know, then the nature of quality and continuous improvement. You can't solve issues and problems in your organization if you don't really understand what they are. We can all look at a process or something going on in our organization, and in our mind we're like, okay, I know what's happening here. But unless you're talking to the end users and the people that are affected indirectly from the processes and decisions that you have in place, I'm not sure you have enough information to really decide what improvements need to be made. So I think that's a skill set that a lot of people should focus in and hone on. You know, of course, we all got accolades. Everyone has degrees. Anyone can get a degree. I've met people that have got PhDs that I wouldn't trust to run a group, right? I mean, a degree says you have an ability to learn and process information and put it back out onto a piece of paper and pass a quote unquote test, right? And then there's the life skills and management to be able to apply the knowledge that you have, either scholastic or life experience, into the problems and situations you face, and being able to solve issues. And I don't think one promises the other. So we can all point to the accolades we have and the certifications we have. At the end of the day, that might get you a seat at the table to talk to people, but then like it's a level playing field. It's how do you relate to people? How do you engage with people, especially in the consulting world? I mean, our business is people and relationships. So something very important here. Yeah, that's what again, I probably give a lot of unconventional answers to folks a little more regimented, but and I'd say if you asked me 10 years ago when I was really focused at process and the project delivery and not so much in the leadership role, my answers may be a little bit different. Uh, but now, having worked with enough of our, the people that steer the company, your perspective changes. When you understand what they're dealing with and what they're trying to solve for the organization, your whole optics shift on what you think is important to help your business be successful.
Now, just making a pivot, taking a pivot. So being in the executive ranks or the upper management ranks of the organization, how has that been different being a Black professional in that area?
So, you know, there's several aspects, right? I think being the only one in a room is challenging. That's tough. But I think one of the other things that we face is a lot of us, you know, come from families, and this isn't necessarily a Black issue. It's a I don't want to say class, but it's you know what I mean? Like, we haven't had family members that have been in organizational leadership roles, or maybe not even in corporate America. So there's this whole lesson of learning that happens around the dinner table for certain communities that we're never exposed to, right? And then you compound that when you get into being Black in a room where you see no representation of yourself. Like, you've already, it's not like you're on the other side of the ceiling, but you know, I still got a couple layers to break through myself. But you're definitely at a level of heights where you are the only, right? It was funny. I was talking to we just hired a new global director of comms, and she's Black, and she's been in our organization for some time. And me and another close friend of mine have been coaching her along the way, and she's we were in a conference call. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I had to take a picture of it because it hit me. In my 19 years of the organization, this is the first time where I've been on a leadership discussion where another director in the room or on the call was Black. That's 19 years in an organization. So yeah, it was, and I texted her and I'm like, yeah, this is a kind of a big moment for me because this is kind of what's happened, and it's kind of cool, and thought I would share. But yeah, we're still having those firsts, and then think how many communities don't have those firsts anymore. So it's challenging, I would say, just from the dynamic of being the only. You've got all the things that play in your head, and they still do. Like, are you at the table because of the skills and the value that you bring to the firm, or because, you know they need to show a different face to the organization? I don't think that ever leaves us. You know, the challenge of, you know, you graduated from one of the top engineering schools at the top of your class, and you look around and you see people that get by, and you're like, you know, those stories of your parents saying you have to do twice as good as everyone else just to accomplish the same start to, I mean, it's just reinforced every step along the way, right? So that constant, even if it's in the back of your mind, it's still there. So I think that's tough to deal with. I think recognizing it's there and compartmentalizing it and saying, okay, I got to deal with this later in the day, and just reflecting on it helps a little bit. We're all going to face those challenges. I don't know that, you know, when I look around my peers and we talk and we go out to dinner, I don't necessarily know that they definitely don't understand you're thinking all those things, but I don't know that they're necessarily looking at you that different either. Some of my closest friends at work happen to be my closest friends, period. And you know, they're good people. You know, we can sit and chat for hours about things that are not even work, even though we called to talk about something about work. I mean, that's the level of relationship that you build with folks. And I mean, they recognize that, you know, if anything, I think they will look at me as younger more than, you know, anything else. I'm not going to say they don't see it, because that's ignorant. I don't believe anyone that says they don't see color. But I think for them, the age difference might be a greater concern, just because they've gotten to know me. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? People include, you know, the whole thing about diversity and inclusion. Well, how does inclusion happen? Well, inclusion happens when people understand and get to know and get comfortable with people on both sides, right? And I hate saying on both sides because it's doesn't endear any good feelings for sure. But it's true, and I think one of my closest mentors at work one day said, you know, you have a lot of potential in the firm, but you, and I was belligerent, and he had every right to tell me this. He's like, you're putting yourself in a situation where you don't want to put yourself in the room with people that can help your career. And because he and I had several close conversations, and I had opportunities to go to meetings, and I'm like, dude, and this is the younger me. Every day I come to work and I go home and, you know, I go out to eat, and because of what we've achieved and where we are, even at that age, a lot of us, unless you go to a NSBE meeting, you're the only Black person you see all day. Um, and I was really honest with him, and he's still one of my closest mentors at work. And I do tell him, you know, I don't want to spend my free time after work hanging around with older white people because I've seen enough during the day. And that's where he just sat down and said, you know, I completely understand where you're coming from, but those people are the people that make decisions about who gets into certain roles, and it's not based on just what you can do. It's the comfort that they've gotten to know you and how they feel about you, and you're only hurting yourself by having that kind of attitude in life. And you know, I there were a couple key meetings where I actually extended myself and went out and embraced, and I saw the effects of just letting my guard down, putting myself into situations where I wasn't, because you know, we all make assumptions about folks. Putting yourself into situations that you're not comfortable with or you didn't really want to be in, especially with your own personal free time. And that's where several things in my career started to really shift and change. And I think it was just breaking down the wall of being known so that they could get to know you, being honest and truthful, not changing who you are, but letting them at least see who you are. I think opened up a lot of doors. And you know, when I coach folks, I said, you know, if your natural state of you is not business professional and really needs some work, you should work on that first. But once you get to a point where you're good to go, you need to build those relationships, because that's where trust happens, and from trust comes inclusion. And I think to expect to be included as an unknown is I think diversity can happen for unknowns. I don't think inclusion can happen from unknowns. I guess we're getting a little philosophical here, probably off topic, but
No, but I think it's insight that people would be interested in from someone at your from your ranks. And I guess I'll conclude with this last question, and that is being, you know, because we share that the time that we've spent in the, I guess, higher ranks of an organization. Um, Inequality, with it being so focused on, you know, pretty close to perfection, right? Because the thing that you have to do, it has to be as good as you can make it on a constant recurring basis. And having the responsibility to be over that portion of a business. How do you deal with the work-life balance part, and also the stress load that comes with that?
so that's a tough one. Um, so you know, the nature of our work and what we do in HDR is it never is far from my mind. So when you're building water infrastructure, or you're building bridges or roadways or hospitals or containment labs for the CDC, the work we do has serious ramifications for communities. Uh, you know, when the I-35 bridge collapsed and it was spinning on the news, um, those things, those in the Florida pedestrian bridge collapsed and you watched what happened. Those are moments that, it keeps me up at night. I know it keeps our CEO up at night. Like, God forbid we ever have a project where today or 20 years from now, like in the case of I-35, it was, decades after construction, something happens and you're watching buses of kids go into a river. I mean, that's where it's hard, right? So when you're thinking about that and you're taking the job in the quality profession seriously, and we have a drive to zero goal here in our firm where we have zero, service delivery issues, which is noble. I don't know if it can ever be obtained, right? You're striving for absolute perfection, and I give kudos to our CEO for challenging the organization. But that's the imperative, because he understands the weight and severity of our projects. Simple decisions just from your field teams, like in Flint, partnering with cities, making process changes to a fluid stream, right? And look what happens to the entire community. So, when we're talking to our engineers and our science professionals, and it's a continual stressor of the importance and the imperative to make sure that we're giving our best work, that we're having everyone check, that we're taking the time out, that we will blow schedule and budget to make sure quality works. Like, that's not the goal, right? But if we know that something is off, we will ensure that we're delivering quality work first and foremost. So I think that's something that our office is challenged with, making sure never loses sight in the organization. And that's a big ask, right? We've got 10,000 people, 220 plus offices around the world, multiple language, multiple cultures. I've got a great team. Our office would not be successful without our team. They're the ones that do the heavy lifting and the great work that helps keep our company afloat. And I think the organization should feel a little sense of indebtedness to them. I know I do, for being out there championing his message and making sure that people have the tools they need to be successful, and that we're continually looking at our processes for delivering work, and ensuring that people don't lose sight of the main goal. One of the things that we try to educate folks on is the, you can leave HDR, right? Like, let's say I was a designer for, let's use the Florida bridge. The designer from there, even though like companies no longer exist anymore, and others are in states of financial despair. I mean, the engineer is going to go and work at some other organization, right? I mean, there's some fact to that, but there's got to be a pride and a sense of ownership of the work you do, that no matter where you go, you own the footprints that you've created in the sand along the way, right? And that's one of the things that we train people. Like, you may leave HDR in the next 5 years or 10 years. Like, we don't want that, but maybe you do. But the work and decisions that you make today are here for the legacy of the firm. And if you're not paying attention to the quality of your work, yeah, you might be gone. And there's some certain legal liabilities if you're a professional engineer for the work you stamp. But at the end of the day, the firm, which is a larger HDR family, which is how we look at our organization, is going to bear the brunt of a poor decision that led to an issue on a project. And when I get a chance to get in front of staff, I always ask them to think about, just look around the room and then go walk around the desks and look at people's pictures, like their families and their kids, and the decisions you make affect their ability to continue to feed and house and clothe their families. Like, if you devastate the firm, you're forcing them potentially, if we can't get work, to have to go and hope to find a job that's as good as the one they have now, so that they can take care of their family. And I like to put into context for people, like, the seriousness of the ramifications of their choices that they make day to day. because I live with that stress every day. And it's not like I'm trying to freak people out. And maybe it's just the nature of that we work in. When you work in quality and risk, you're always thinking of things that could go wrong that jeopardize the firm or jeopardize projects, right? So it's this constant stress where you're like under like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Am I doing enough to keep our firm safe? And at the same time, one of the things that stresses me out is I'm looking at my team and saying, my team's got to be better than me. So do I have the right people in my team? Can they walk and fill my shoes? Am I doing everything I can to coach and develop my team so that if you pull me out of the piece of the puzzle, the rest of the office is fine, meaning that the organization is still safe, right? Because if I don't take care of my team and I don't position them to be their best, and then something happens to me or I go on to do something else in the organization or some other division, then I've put my organization at risk because I've not prepared my office to be able to execute the charge at a level even higher than I was able to do, right? Like that's a legacy that I think you should look at, is hire people smarter and better than you so that your office can elevate itself beyond what you were able to take it to when you're out of the picture. So you put that with the responsibility of the work, and yeah, man, it's tough. Like I've gone gray, I'd say, pretty quick. The body starts to break down. You start to get like the stress cortisol levels going up, and well, you know how it is, man. You start to stack on a bunch of extra weight, and it's like. So the other thing is, you got to take care of yourself at the end of the day. Like, find time to decompress. Uh, Pick some things that you really enjoy doing and go do them. Exercise, keep yourself fit. I think that's one of the good things about COVID is it's forced us all to slow down, not travel as much. About 4 weeks or so into the fiasco, I'm like, I got a lot of extra time. Maybe I'll just go and jog or ride my bike every day, right? So I started doing that. Next thing you know, like 25 pounds slip off, and you feel better about yourself, and you're not in as much aches and pains anymore. And it was a good reminder for me. Like even when things pick back up, you got to carve out even more time to take care of yourself and your health. Because if you're not good, you're not doing anyone around you any good. So just I think in every disaster, you got to look at what have we learned and what's the positives that come out of it. And I hope everyone's taken the time during this global disaster to take stock of the lessons we're learning along the way, and don't revert back to some toxic patterns, right? But yeah, I think I will hopefully be in a better position to deal with the stress once we get back to reality. Knock on wood, everything goes out. Like I said, it's a plan.
Understood. No, I think you brought up a couple key points, and one of those is a lot of us, as quality professionals or just Black professionals in general, like to put ourselves in a position where we're the only person that can do a certain thing. Yeah. It's more valuable to the organization when you can put together a piece of a puzzle where you created this process to where it can work if you're there or if you're not there. And it's counterintuitive to actually believe that, but in the long run, when you can create those type of processes, you add more value to the firm than you being the stop gate or the roadblock because you're the only person that can do X, Y, Z certain skill.
I've been it's not like we're like uh, super close or anything, but I've been able to get to know our CEO a little bit better over the years. And he recently shared a story with me that really brought a lot of things to light. It wasn't like a change in mindset, but it brought clarity to why I was thinking a lot of certain things, and it helped squash, I think, some of the innate fears that you still have that you don't know you have, right? So he was in a position where we knew of an asset that would add great value to our firm, and our only asset are people, right? So and was close to the individual and saw a gap, an opening where there was an opportunity that presented itself that we could bring them into the firm. And I'm probably getting the story all wrong, but basically he had asked the gentleman what, kind of what would it take, and he'd be like, I kind of like the job that you have, but I don't think that could happen, right? Because a lot of people are protective, like I need my job. But he took that information and basically went immediately to leadership internal and said, we need to bring this guy in for my role. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know yet, but he's going to do well in this role, and he's an asset we need in our firm. And I think that story for me, it's basically what you were just explaining. Like it's the counterintuitive part, and now he's the CEO. So like, just think about, and it wasn't his next role, right? But it led to a new role, that led to a new role, that led to a new role. But that was his guiding principle: is identify the people that are going to come into your organization and do the job well, potentially better than you can even do it, because that's what you want, and things will work out. I believe that. I think if you're creating a kingdom where you're required to be there, you're not doing yourself any favors, because now you're forced to manage the kingdom, right? So you've got to have your tendrils in it so much that you can't grow. You're not developing the people around you, which if they're not being developed, if they stay, they're not going to be overly happy or challenged or better people at the end. And for me, I take that personally, like that sucks. Or they just leave, and that's not great either, right? And I'd say even with the processes you develop in the organization, if you're doing it and you don't want to train it because there's some innate fear that you, well, either a desire to feel important or a fear of being replaced, you really need to take a step back and analyze like your whole approach to life and business and work. Because I find just the opposite, like things will take care of themselves. Be a connector, it sounds like oh, you just say that because you have to, because you're in leadership. But I think honestly, if you're thinking of the organization first, and the people of the organization, everything else will work out for you. Like I just, how can it not, right? If you're in a good organization. And that's where I guess the caveat is that, because I know there are organizational cultures out there where, you do have to protect yourself, and you do have to exalt your accomplishments and your accolades. I don't think those are healthy environments to work in. And I think, if people feel themselves having to do that, maybe they look at other places, right? So I think as much as you can diffuse yourself from processes and get them so that anyone can come in and lead that process or lead a group, the better off the organization is. And decentralization is good. Because if a cause misses, it's not just an issue with that part of the machinery. It's the whole machine is affected, right? Like if it's that essential, you cripple an organization. So I think that's a good point. And that was one of the stories he shared, within the last 4 or 5 months that just really resonated with me. I was like, that took a huge leap of faith, but yeah, it worked out, right?
But I think that's essential for this type of business, is that mindset. So Jerome, again, I'd like to thank you for being the number spotlight for the National Society of Black Engineers Process Improvement SIG. And thank you very much.
Yep, no worries, man. Anytime.
All right.
Pleasure.
Same here.